I was thinking if you can shut that off, I can start and I'll be kind of on time anyway.
We need to go tell the,
All right.
I can just turn it down.
completely off.
So I mean, good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Unitarian Universalist congregation of humanists, theists, atheists, agnostics, seekers, and interfaith families. You can learn more about what's happening here by going to our website, uuneedham.org, and signing up for our weekly email newsletter or following us on social media. This morning's service and many past and future services are available on YouTube at our First Parish in Needham channel. Here at First Parish, we covenant to live out our shared values of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, respecting the earth and co-creating beloved community. Whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever your background or identity, whatever your age or stage, whether you walked or rolled in, and wherever you're participating from, you are welcome here. I am Gail Lehman, she, her, and I've been coming to First Parish since I moved to Needham just over a decade ago. I feel blessed to be part of this community and to share in several ways, including the pastoral care team, memorial garden team, and soon again, the choir, which is looking for more members. Today, I am pleased to welcome Cathy Livingston. Cathy has pursued her interest in the stages of human development since her first year in college. Her interest in later stages of life has grown to support her own aging process. She's been researching the gifts of aging process since the 1990s as she helped create the vision and programming for LaSalle Village in Auburndale. Currently, she's working on developing a spiritual pyramid to help guide us to retain our hope, love, and joy for living. Cathy has been associated with First Parish for more than 25 years and has held multiple leadership roles, including serving as president during the 2-year period when the new parish hall was being built. Her current research and writing efforts focus on celebrating the many gifts associated with the aging process. Welcome again to everyone here in the building and online. We're so glad you're here to join us. And special welcome to Cathy Livingston.
It always takes a moment to get used to all of this up here. So I chose a blessing from John O'Donohue for our chalice writing. It's from Eternal Echoes. I'm going to change it to the plural from what you see in your program. May we experience each day as a sacred gift woven around our hearts of wonder. Welcome.
I don't know how this works. There
you go.
Okay. We should practice, right?
Here.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the covenant is a set of promises the membership of a congregation strives to honor with one another and out in the world. Please say along with me the words of our parish covenant. We gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world. Okay, our opening hymn is number 77, Seek Not Afar for Beauty. And please join us. No, I'm not. No.
Well, with me
I mean,
at least.
I will sing it, but everybody sing along if you know.
If you can.
It's in your book, number 77, if you want the melody. Okay.
Okay.
Please rise in spirit or in body.
your beauty, lo, it glows in dewy grasses all about your feet, in birds in sunshine, childish faces sweet, in stars and mountain summits topped with snow. Go not abroad for happiness, behold, it is a flower blooming at your door. But in earth left her home and evermore, joy shall be yours as changing years unfold. In wonder workings or some bush aflame, we look for truth and fancy it concealed. But in earth's coming things it stands revealed, while grass and flowers and stars spell out the name.
And this is the time in our service to share joys and sorrows that weigh on our hearts. If you have a joy or sorrow to share today, please come up and put a stone in the water. Tell us your name and pronouns.
I've been saving this for the right moment. Carolyn is not here this morning to share in our joy. My name is Phil Lyons. I go by he, him, and his. Our younger daughter, Alyssa, who lives out in Northfield, has already given us one grandchild and is now in expectation of a blessed event, as they used to say in the 19th century. We're expecting our third grandchild in February.
I'm Judy Hadrick, and my pronouns are she and hers. This is stone in the water to commemorate 3 milestone birthdays in this month. The first one is my godson, Sebastian Lazar, who lives in Virginia, and he's turning 13, so he will be entering his teens. And my granddaughter, Emma, will be 21 on September 25th. And Emma's grandmother and Sebastian's godmother is going to be 80 this coming Tuesday.
Thank you. And I want to say, if there are any things in your heart that you don't want to share publicly, Lynn Jakowski is the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week. You can talk to her or email pastoralcare@uuneedham.org. Thank you. Okay. For all the joys and sorrows we still hold in our hearts, and acknowledging the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we'll place a final stone in the water.
As part of our service, we do take a minute for a brief meditation to allow us all to kind of just calm down and center. So this is another reading from John O'Donohue, and I like to pluralize it, but I feel like if I put it in quotes, I need to keep with what he said. It's from Beauty, the Invisible Embrace. To behold beauty dignifies our lives. It heals us and calls us out beyond the smallness of our own limitations to experience new horizons. To experience beauty is to have your life enlarged. I'll ring the chime and we'll have about a little bit less than a minute just to reflect on beauty in our lives. Gail will give us our first reading.
This reading is by John O'Donohue for Equilibrium, from To Bless the Space Between Us, a Book of Blessings. Like the joy of the sea coming home to shore, may the relief of laughter rinse through your soul. As the wind loves to call things to dance, may your gravity be lightened by grace. Like the dignity of moonlight restoring the earth, may your thoughts incline with reverence and respect. As water takes whatever shape it is in, so free may you be about who you become. As silence smiles on the other side of what's said, may your sense of irony bring perspective. As time remains free of all that it frames, may your mind stay clear of all it names. May your prayer of listening deepen enough to hear in the depths the laughter of God. This summer, in July and August, our plate collection is shared equally between First Parish and the Needham Community Council. Now is the time in our service to give what we can for our church and our community. May the usher come forward. Thank you.
So our second reading is also from John O'Donohue for those of us who are exhausted. We have traveled too fast over false ground. Now our souls have come to take us back. Take refuge in our senses. Open up to all the small miracles we have rushed through. Let's become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight. Take time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of this day. Draw along the silence of stone until its calmness can claim us. So, if you haven't noticed, my topic today is searching for enchantment. So good morning to everyone, including those of you, I don't know if I should call you the Zoomers or the Zoomies, but we are thinking of you here. It does feel a little strange, but it feels good to me to be back with you in person here again at Parish Hall. The only downside that I can see about delivering my remarks from here today is that for those of you that have watched me on Zoom in the past, I have these two darling cats that no matter what I do to try to entertain them before I start speaking, they manage to show up. So one is Teddy Tico and one is Cracker Jack. And when I left this morning, they're like, we're gonna miss seeing you. So I chose this topic, searching for enchantment, not because I'm ignoring the very difficult times that we live in, but I become more convinced each day from both my research and my life experience that we need to include practices in our daily lives that foster our experiencing joy in all. I'm struck by the fact that I can find examples of the food pyramid anywhere I look, where it has layers of the foods that we should eat a lot of, some that we should use sparingly, but I have yet to see a spiritual pyramid, which reminds us of the practices we need to do to keep ourselves happy, healthy, and whole. We're left actually to experiment with that on our own. You know, I watched the service a couple weeks ago by Wendy Blum and Lynn Jakowski, along with their spouses and George on the drums, about finding our way. That title to me spoke about that we are left to our own to find our way, pretty much. And I loved that they included things like music and poetry, because that to me is also what opens our hearts to enchantment. So left to my own devices, I pay attention to practices that bring me a sense of peace and wholeness. I'm actually cognizant of the positive impact that moments of awe and joy have on my well-being. I can actually visualize the experience as it's happening. Physically, I become aware of what I describe as sort of a wave of positive energy that starts either in my head or in my heart. And I can actually sense it traveling through my body. My spirits are immediately uplifted as I recognize that my outlook has shifted. Whatever worry, anxiety, or feeling that had been claiming my attention is immediately replaced by a sense of wonder and many levels of beauty that we have access to in our lives. I am comfortable describing these experiences as feelings of enchantment. When this topic popped into my head when I was asked to make remarks today, my initial impulse was to check my own understanding of the concept of enchantment. I found an explanation that makes sense to me. Above all, to live an enchanted life is to fall in love with the world all over again. An enchanted life is all-embracing. It wakens a vivid sense of belonging to a rich and many-layered world. This summer, I was fortunate to gain access to the introduction of a book that's coming out this month. The author, Dr. Sharon Blackie, is a psychologist who claims to have been born into a rich Irish-Scottish culture. resulting in a childhood that was rich in poetry, literature, and an ample supply of myths and folklore. Have been watching David White poetry readings on Sundays for over 4 years, and he always says that it was his mother reading to him poetry and myth when he was growing up that awakened in his heart this sense of appreciation of enchantment. In Blackie's new book, The Enchanted Life, Unlocking the Magic of Everyday Life, she offers us a set of practical and grounded tools for finding enchantment in our daily lives and places we live. Her view on enchantment suggests that it is an experience available to all of us through a profound and wholehearted participation in the adventure of life. Enchantment is a natural, spontaneous human tendency. All you have to do is watch a young child to see how they just experience the wonder and awe of life. We possess this as children, but we lose it through social and cultural pressures as we grow older. Blackie states that to experience enchantment is really about an attitude of mind, which means that an enchanted life is possible for any of us. It's intuitive, it embraces wonder, and fully engages the mythic imagination. To live this way is to be awakened, to be gripped and shaken to the core by the extraordinary life which lies at the heart of the ordinary. An attitude of mind is nothing more than simply our way of thinking and feeling. An open attitude of mind just means a willingness to look at things in a different light. In Blackie's words, if being open to enchantment is to fully participate in the world, then to be disenchanted is the opposite. To be disenchanted is to shut down. When we experience the world as children, our way of being in the world is naturally open to wonder and awe. But we lose our facility for that enchantment as we grow older, and in part because we absorb the messages sent our ways by others. Disenchantment in some ways is ingrained in our culture, and according to researchers, it goes a long way back. I knew I was on the same wavelength as Blackie when I was drawn to her statement that we actually lose our facility for being enchanted because we are absorbing messages from the culture that it is not allowed. So what messages might we be absorbing? And I think it's worth spending a few minutes thinking about that, because if we can remove or pay attention to what's blocking our ability to experience enchantment, we may just have more opportunities to do so. Blackie and other researchers point to the period of time in our history which some refer to as the Age of Enlightenment, in which we promoted the rational and intellectual sources of information above all other types of knowing. In that period, we were taught to downplay or mistrust experiences that originated from our physical senses, as well as from our emotional responses. One of the outcomes of that way of thinking was that people made decisions that human life was superior to every other life form. That's an interesting statement. The consequences of this misguided belief have led to our blocking ourselves from absorbing what we can learn through other ways of knowing. We concluded that humans are the only life form that has a language, which in the thinking of the time was just another point solidifying our position as superior. But lo and behold, as we begin to take a closer look at nature, we're making discoveries that challenge those assumptions. I've always had sort of a special place in my heart for trees. I'm not sure why, but I can recall children's books and movies in which trees had human-like faces, and they could talk, and they could even walk. Years ago, I purchased kits from Needham Garden Center that made it possible to create a face on a tree. The little kits came with eyes, a nose, and a mouth. So I bought like 4 of those kits. And I have great trees that I can see from my kitchen window, and they all have faces on them. So when I'm cooking or doing the dishes, I can look out at these trees and I just get the sense that they're watching me and talking back to me. Not surprisingly, Peter Wohlleben book, The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel and How They Communicate, captivated me. The author spent more than 20 years working as an arborist in Germany, and I really was moved by the book. I felt like I had met a soulmate. What a wonderful revelation and journey it is to read someone who is open to discovering these beautiful living creatures within our communities. He reveals that trees communicate by scent and through their overlapping root systems that are host to fungi that operate like fiber optic internet cables. Science has now adopted a term that describes this process, and it's known as the Wood Wide Web. It's hard to say because I want to say World Wide Web. And it pervades our forests. These natural networks that trees operate through, their overlapping root systems, appear to favor cooperation and equitable distribution of information and resources. Ever since learning that trees actually communicate with one another and help each other, I find myself looking at them quite differently. I have different paths in Needham and other places that I enjoy walking, and having read about the hidden life of trees, I now actually name some of my favorite trees on my walks. Realizing that we can learn so much from nature makes it more likely that I will encounter something enchanting in a daily walk. I love the Fuller Brook Pathway in Wellesley, and there are two beautiful tall pine trees near each other on that path as you head from Wellesley into Wellesley Hills. I've actually named them Your Majesties. And I greet them as I walk past them. And on windy days, I picture them with their great branches kind of blowing gently, that they're sort of curtsying to me, thanking me for respecting them and thinking they're beautiful. That's how I feel enchantment. He points out also, Wohlleben points out, and I see this in my own backyard that is surrounded by tall trees, that if you look at the crowns of trees, they don't invade each other's space. They somehow manage to send a signal like, look, I'm already here, you're getting too close to me, so back off. So I do think there's something legitimate that I can see that really does talk about the way that they sort of use their wood wide web to communicate with each other. So I think part of finding enchantment requires that we open ourselves up to other ways of knowing that go beyond our thinking minds. I believe paying close attention to the natural world is perhaps one of our easiest paths to experiencing moments of awe and joy. Here's another discovery I had this summer, because once I chose this topic, I'm looking everywhere I can to see what's stimulating me to have a sense of enchantment. So there was an article in the New York Times this summer by Elaine Chen on July 21st. The article was titled, "Can You Understand Bird?" Well, that got my attention. It's a great little article. I was doing it online. So there were pictures of different birds and their sound, and each bird had a little pop quiz under it. As you listened to it, was multiple choice, and you had to choose what that bird was saying. So I got about half of them right. But they were saying things like, I'm still hungry. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I can't find a place to nest. So I don't know how the researchers were able to tell the right answer. But to tell you the truth, I didn't really care. So, one of my favorite joys over the summer is gardening, and I have extensive gardens, particularly in my backyard. And I'm out there both in the mornings and evenings. And usually in the evening around 6 or 7, because I feed the birds, they all seem to come back around the same time, and they're up in the trees. For years, I've listened to their conversations. And then I thought, all that chatter has to mean something. They just talk continuously to each other when they come back together. So I thought, I wonder what they're really saying. So I give myself permission to use my imagination to think about what they might be saying to one another. So, for example, I think maybe they could share who had the best bird seed out today. Whose bird baths are the cleanest? Where do you want to avoid because they have cats that are outdoor? And you know how cats can behave around birds. So it's just fun to listen to them. I also have cardinals that for years have enjoyed nesting and raising their young in trees and bushes near my backyard. When it's time for these fledgling cardinals to leave the nest, I believe the whole extended family is sent an invitation. Aunts, uncles, second cousins twice removed, all gather for the initial launching. So I've watched what happens for years, because even if I'm not paying attention to the time of the summer, I can hear it. So I go outside, and these baby cardinals that are ready to leave the nest fly immediately to the ground under my bird feeders, and these adult cardinals literally dive bomb them, trying to make them get off the ground and get up on the feeders. And I can just picture the parents and the aunts and uncles saying, "Don't you remember how many times we told you about cats? You know, they are these lovely fuzzy creatures. The downside is they like to eat you." So they stay at it until those babies learn to get up on the bird feeders. So another beautiful book that I read a couple of years ago that I was reminded of when I was writing this was Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass: Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. If you haven't read it, it's worth reading the first 3 or 4 pages. It is the most beautiful description of creation that I've ever read. It starts with Sky Woman, who falls through a hole in Sky World, coming down toward the earth. The animals that are here already and sort of figure out she's going to land in the water, we've got to help her. So they gather all the turtles who swim out and form like a landing for her. So she lands on the backs of the turtles, and all the animals that are comfortable diving for mud do so, bring it up, and that's how, through her singing and their cooperation together, they actually put the rest of the earth together. And, you know, like a good guest, she doesn't come empty-handed, because when she falls through the hole in Sky World, she grabs the tree of life and some of its branches. So she has seeds and everything for them to plant. So when I read her description of creation, I couldn't help but wonder how different my orientation to the world might have been had I learned this version of creation rather than the Adam and Eve story. The Adam and Eve story stresses basically that we are sinners and that the whole creation process is the work of one individual God, whereas Sky Woman, it's a collaborative experience and it's a sense of joy and wonder. You know, my generation grew up in a time when interactions with children were more about grooming us to conform than to listen to our imaginations and senses of wonder. Child-rearing practices of the time emphasized the need for discipline in order to wipe out or contain children's sinful or inappropriate imaginations. And through my research about creating our own narrative, and also as a teacher, children are like sponges when they're very young and before they have the ability to really evaluate what people are telling them. So harsh or negative statements about one's worthiness can be expunged as we grow older and get a perspective. But that doesn't guarantee that some of the damages from those statements are totally removed. If you think about sometime today, a negative comment that someone made to you when you were younger, if you can still recall that comment, then my feeling is that there's some residue of that harm still floating through you. So my point here is to call attention to that harboring feelings of unworthiness may well be interfering with letting ourselves experience joy. I think of them as sort of an invisible membrane that can block our feelings of awe and joy based on their underlying message that we've accepted that because we are flawed, we are not worthy of joy. One year here, we were actually in the sanctuary. I focused my remarks on the topic of joy. And I actually had a couple people in the audience, I don't remember who they are, which is a good thing, mildly accost me with comments like the following: how can you possibly imagine experiencing joy with all the negativity that exists in the world? Why do you think it's within our reach to experience joy? What makes you think we deserve or merit joy? So you get the message. There are other explanations regarding how we manage our lives in such a way that there's little chance of our living with enchantment. We can always make sure that we're so busy that we shut out any quiet moments of reflection and exploration. We can become so committed to social justice and serving others that we lose sight of the necessity to care for our own wellness. I believe that searching for enchantment is a necessary survival skill in the world today. Why? Because the news and our lives bombard us throughout the day with stories that are filled with hatred, lies, unkindness, and a deep unwillingness to be open to the needs of others. It's easy to find ourselves being sucked into this bottomless pit of negativity. If we are news junkies, for example, we can find ourselves spiraling in decline before we realize what is happening to us as we lose hope that things can get better. Without nurturing the hope and energy it takes to keep focused on the positive, we allow those bombarding us with negative messages based on hatred and self-serving motives to win. We, in effect, allow them to put out the flame of hope in our hearts. I see my life as a gift, and once I really settled on that revelation, knowing that even though there are disappointments, losses, all kinds of other ailments that we encounter in our lives, but I've come to understand that that gift is up to me to use well. I am responsible for putting the nutrients in my body that keeps me well, and that includes my spiritual wellness as well. So what steps can we take to increase our opportunities for enchantment? I think enchantment comes from the moments of awe that lead to joy and a sense of well-being. If you haven't read Dr. Keltner's recent book, Awe, The New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Can Transform Our Lives, he defines awe as the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our culture of understanding the world. He summarizes the research that he and others completed in an effort to identify the most commonly listed sources of awe and wonder. Based on studies asking the participants to describe those experiences, he and his staff ranked those opportunities that were cited most frequently. Be forewarned, I thought about the danger of my sharing that list with you, because if you're like me, you're going to sit there and say, well, I didn't do that one. I'm not sure about this one. That's a good, healthy response. So just to give you an antidote to getting too sucked into his list, I disagree with some of his list. I think it's incomplete. So just listen. I'm not going to give you all of it. I'll give you some of it. He starts with moral beauty as the top of his list. And he defines that, he uses that phrase to refer to witnessing or learning about other people's courage, their kindness, their strength, or overcoming challenges in their lives. I can understand his putting that on that list, because I get a sense of respect and just awe when I read about kindness or see kindness between people. He also lists a phrase called collective inspiration. And by that, I think he refers to the uplifting emotional core with experiences where we see community coming together, working together to fulfill and address a need in that community. He places nature in the third rank. I probably would have put it up there as a tie with moral beauty, particularly as I listen to so many of you in the parish when we share discussions on this topic. You also put nature near the top. Music is a no-brainer on that list. Anything that's visually pleasing, I think of paintings, I think of sculpture, I think of beautiful gardens. His last category caught my attention. He adds epiphanies to that list. It's when you get an insight, where all the stuff that's kind of been floating around in your head seems to come together and make sense. And epiphanies can occur when you're just quiet, you're meditating. I read a lot, and so I get a lot of sense of insight from reading, which gives me a sense of wholeness. So think about what you might add to this list. I've actually made cards for everybody. So I hope you pick one up with a little message about becoming enchantment. Becoming enchanted, and there's space on the card for you to keep track of sort of what stimulates you or what encourages you to feel enchantment. So I would also, my list includes poetry and literature and any source of good writing. As I mentioned, this afternoon at 1 o'clock, I have another Zoom meeting with David White, along with like 17 other people, 100 people from the world, as he reads from his poetry and reflects on it. I just find it so inspirational. So the key to succeeding and finding enchanting experiences begins with me with what may seem like simple steps. And I share that with you in the hopes that maybe my thoughts are helpful to you. One of the things I notice is I have to be in a space where I have the ample mental and emotional space available to notice when something catches my attention. I don't need to be in a meditative space where we're taught to let all of our thoughts go and just focus on our breath, but I do have to have silence or quiet so that I'm sort of free or in a neutral state to notice what's around me. I need to have room that when something catches my eye, my ear, my sense of smell, touch, or taste, that I can stop for a moment and really take it in. I find it helpful if I'm in a situation, which usually means I'm not driving, where I can come to a momentary standstill. Sometimes I notice something when I'm driving and I think, God, that's beautiful, I have to come back and look at it. But I can do that when I'm walking. It's taken me a little bit of a practice to recognize when something's trying to get my attention. If you ever read, I think it's Magical Thinking with Elizabeth Gilbert, she has this funny notion that ideas and thoughts sort of like ring our doorbell, trying to get our attention. And if we don't notice, they may ring in a second time, maybe a third time. But after a while, they say, okay, you're not available. I'm going to find somebody else that might take this in. So there has to be a sort of training of ourselves initially to recognize when something like that is trying to get our attention. I try to stay in that space long enough to take in what it is that I'm actually experiencing. I actually take this step to label and say aloud what it is that I'm seeing or experiencing. So, there's a philosophy, like when you're helping people learn, that the more senses you bring into something, auditory, visual, touch, the deeper it settles within you. So those are some of the things that I do that have helped me experience just that feeling of enchantment. And if you've listened a little bit, I often use the word moment. It is a moment. It doesn't have to be a long experience, but it can be immediate. And as I said before, I can actually feel it moving through my body. I'll share a couple of things just so you see how ordinary they are. In June this year, I think it was the Times, or it could have been the Globe, had an article about doing awe walks, AWE. So they suggested that you organize them around your senses. So the first one I did was I decided I'm going to notice color. So, I went for a walk, maybe 3 miles. I had no idea how many colors I would see. But I came home with a mental list of like 38 different colors I saw. Now, sometimes that's because there's like 12 shades of red you see on a walk. It can be cranberry red. I managed to get Cabernet red in, fire engine red, barnhouse red. So and the thing is, once you do something like that, you pay attention to color much more. One Sunday, I chose on an early Sunday morning to walk in Needham and to listen to sound. It's very quiet if you walk early Sunday morning in Needham, at least in the summer when everybody's away. But for the first time, I couldn't believe how many times I could hear the wind. I could hear leaves blowing. I could hear things blowing over. I noticed wind chimes anytime that I passed a house that had wind chimes up. So by paying attention to our senses, it just makes us have a much more heightened awareness of things that we're experiencing. I did a walk around dinner time on Friday evening through Needham Center, and with all the restaurants, there's a wonderful aroma of smells. And so by the time I got home, I was like starving. And I'm a vegetarian, so I don't miss meat, but when I smell people grilling hamburgers and hot dogs, it's like, oh my God. So gardening for me is also a reliable source for enchantment. For those of you that gardened, I'm sure that you have a similar experience. 2 nights ago, I'm trying to water around dusk, and there were 3 hummingbirds that were visiting things around me, and they didn't even seem to notice that I was a person in their space. They just kind of like skirted around me. It was just wonderful to watch them enjoy the plants. So one evening when I was sitting out back, I had just freshened. I have like 7 bird baths in my backyard. And I noticed that birds love it when there's fresh water. So I watched this male cardinal land on the edge of the bird bath one night. And they're very cautious birds. They look like 18 times to the right, to the left, up and down. Is there anybody near me that could get me when I'm taking a drink? So the bird took a drink, and it was like, wow, this is really fresh. So that deliberated a little longer, then he jumped in. What was joyful about it was watching him discover how much fun and refreshing this was. I swear to God, he stayed there 10 minutes, and I had to go fill the bird bath again because he did so much splashing. There wasn't much left for any other birds, so I had to talk to him a little bit about sharing. Acts of kindness really get to me. One morning when I was coming back from a walk, I came through the new Needham Town Center and the Common, and I noticed an older man coming out of, he must have come from Sudbury Farms. He was walking very slowly and carrying 2 bags. And they had recently paved Highland Avenue, so the crosswalks weren't painted on it yet. And he was getting ready to step onto the street, and I could see this huge SUV coming toward him. And so I was like trying to pick up my pace to make sure he knew to look before he crossed. And I could see this SUV getting closer, and it was a woman driving. And she put out her hand to me like, it's okay, I see him. So she stopped way back, and he didn't look, he just stepped out. So she saw me kind of trying to catch up with him. So she's like, we're playing charades. She's like signaling to me, you want to walk? Do? Mm-hmm. So she waited for me to walk, and then I waved at her, and we both laughed and smiled. But it was very uplifting just to see someone pay that much attention and be kind enough to think about the way, stop back far enough so you're not frightening him. So that was another easy, ordinary sense of just seeing kindness in other people. So, I read a little quote from the Dalai Lama saying that the purpose of life is to be happy. He goes on to say that the basic source of happiness is a sense of kindness and warm-heartedness towards others. The key to happiness is peace of mind, and inner happiness has to be cultivated by each of us from within. I want to share a quote from Catherine May's book, Enchantment, A Waking Wonder in an Anxious Age. If you haven't read her, she's someone I discovered recently, and she describes herself as discovering that she was somewhat autistic when she was an adult. She didn't know this about herself growing up, but she has an incredible sensory awareness, and so her descriptions, if you enjoy good descriptions, are very rich. She says that enchantment is small wonder magnified through meaning, fascination caught in the web of fable and memory. It relies on small doses of awe, those quiet traces of fascination that are found only when we look for them. It is the sense that we are joined together in one continuous thread of existence, with the elements constituting the earth. And there is a potency trapped in this inner connection, a tingle on the border of our perception. It is the forgotten seam in our geology, the elusive particle that binds our unstable matter, the ability to sense magic in the everyday, to channel it through our minds and bodies, to be sustained by it. Without it, I feel I am lacking some essential nutrient, some vitamin found only when you go digging in your own soil. So there's a cue for me on my spiritual pyramid. So we come to see that there are other ways of imagining the world and our place in it, and of living more intensely and more richly in a world that is often filled with challenge and sorrow. I'd like to close with some words that a friend of mine sent me. The author is Toko Paterner, and my friend, dear friend, is Michelle Lepori. She's one of my spiritual partners, and she lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Turner shares that she is often questioned about the value of taking time from social action to make time for soul work. In her response to critics who say that doing soul work is just simple navel-gazing in a time of world crisis, when we really need people acting on the front lines. She responded to this criticism by pointing out that enriching one's inner life and committing to social action or ministry work are not mutually exclusive. Instead, she affirms that they are symbiotic. She says if we move into action from the same anxieties that got us into these troubles in the first place, we'll never repair the brokenness that exists in all of us. So we need, we're not taking time away and wasting it if we do things that keep us spiritually whole. So it's probably no surprise that I'm drawn to those who understand the importance of doing the work to understand more about our own narratives and stories. So going forward, I think my next project, although I'm not sure, I just had a book published on composing your own narrative. And I'm going to be teaching a class online with people that follow me on a blog that want to go through the book. And I'm trying to train some people in the group to do the work themselves. But I think my next project is going to be trying to see if there is work out there about some options of building a spiritual pyramid. So, what I kind of sense at the base is that there has to be, especially as we age, we have to have a healing narrative about our lives. I want to put a little plug in that our ministerial intern, Dara, and I are offering a theme-based small group ministry starting in early October on becoming an elder. We've done a lot of research of that over the summer, and it'll be short. We'll go for like 8 to 10 weeks, I think, quitting before Christmas, to look at things we have to think about if we want to step into the role of being an elder. So you'll see something in the bell notes if it interests you. I also am offering a walking group on Wednesday morning to leave from the parish. I'm calling it Fleet Feet, Let's Get Moving. And it's really more about a community builder than it is about athleticism. So if any of that interests you, just think about it. So I thank you for listening today, and I want to share that, when I walked in this morning, there was some kind of flurry of activity around that food table, and it's sort of like hummingbirds, that when I tried to see what was going on, I was told, the topic is enchantment, you can just go away now. We know what we're doing, so just go sit in the chair, and we'll see what happens afterwards. So I do invite you to stay for some bagels and a chance to talk together. And I thank you so much for listening.
Cathy, thank you. And thank you for goodies. And I guess you're offering people to take these when they leave. And thank you for the classes you're planning. Wow. Would you please join me in our chalice extinguishing from wherever you are? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And we have a closing hymn, number 326, in your or the words are in your service.
Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
So we're closing with a quote from John O'Donohue from his book, To Bless the Space Between Us, and it's called For Beauty. As stillness in stone to silence is wed, may solitude foster your truth in word. As a river flows in ideal sequence, may your soul reveal where time is present. As the moon absolves the dark of distance, may your style of thought bridge the difference. As the breath of light awakens color, may the dawn anoint your eyes with wonder. As spring rain softens the earth with surprise, may your winter places be kissed with light. As the ocean dreams to the joy of dance, may the grace of change bring your elegance. As clay anchors a tree in light and wind, may your outer life grow with peace from within. As twilight pervades the belief of night, may beauty sleep lightly within your heart. welcome. Our covenant in the room is that we respect confidentiality. So if we record it, then I feel like we lose that. Yeah. So in my other groups, I haven't let people record. So I'll send it to you.